Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I'm joined with a returning guest, a guy with quite the personality, I must say. His name is Aaron Clarey, a.k.a. Captain Capitalism. Also goes by Cappy, Captain. Very straightforward, conservative talk, and he'll consult your problems if you have any at assholeconsulting.com. Aaron, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Aaron, I want to get your thoughts here on liberal ideology, and if you believe there is some sort of false agenda that is being spread for political gain regarding women's rights.
Do I think? I'd say it's not even a philosophy or a theory. Yes, it's very obvious that that's what the left does, is they split Americans into different groups of people and pit them against one another and say, oh, this group is oppressing you and that group is oppressing you, and only we, through you voting for us and putting us in power, can make it right. So, yeah, I mean, this has been going on since Lyndon B. Johnson and the Great Society.
Well, what started in the Great Society that really drove the liberal left into this, ideology, this whole aspect of women's rights, equal pay, minority rights, wage discrimination, all these different things that we can talk about, even guns and, what we do around the world. I mean, what happened back then that is causing that?
Well, what happened? I mean, it was very noble. I mean, I don't think that its origins was not malicious or evil in nature. Although Lyndon B. Johnson, and pardon the quote, he says, give me the money and we'll have those niggers voting us for the next 100 years. So there was some nefarious. Yeah, I mean, look it up. I mean, I don't like the word, but that's what was said. But there was a political aim to keep the Democrats in party, but the political aim or the moral aim was to help out minorities and women. Minorities obviously weren't doing as well. We had Jim Crow laws. There was still residual the residual discrimination, even though we fought the Civil War. Not to mention, it had not necessarily anything to do with women or minorities, although there was that component or aspect. But it was like, we'd like to help out the poor. So here you are, you're the United States. We're just booming in the 50s and the 60s. We should be able to have this utopian society where we eliminate poverty and income disparity amongst men, women, and other different groups. And so that was what begat the Great Society. So we're going to have government take care of you. We're going to give you a leg up. And then hopefully over the course of time, we'll close the various social, economic, and health gaps between the different people. Now, that was, coming up on 60 years ago, 50 years ago, certainly, and it hasn't worked. One of the books I've written, The Black Man's Guide Out of Poverty, I did the studying and the economics and the research for it, as a percentage of white standards of living, be it, financial, health, life expectancy, etc. Blacks really haven't closed the gaps at all. Everyone keeps talking about the wage gap between men and women. That's still at about 75%. And basically what you got to say, okay, what we've been trying for the past 50 years hasn't been working. And two full generations now of minorities and women have suffered lower standards of living compared to if we were to use white males as a base or a standard, their white male counterparts. So what you would have to say as someone who truly cares about his fellow minority or black brother or sister or female sister is, all right, this isn't working. We're not closing these gaps. Let's try different tactics. But what has happened, unfortunately, since the 1960s is, I'd say, that genuinely malicious and nefarious political forces, not to mention, I'd say, truly bigoted forces, are using these discrepancies as a means to extract further resources out of other groups, where they don't really care about closing the gap. They want to be paid more money for less work. And that's why no one has the temerity or the balls to basically point out the wage gap is due to women majoring in easier subjects, or that when it comes to minorities, black or Hispanic, that they have more children out of wedlock, and that immediately puts you at a great disadvantage. I mean, I just told you the two solutions right there. It's no secret. And if we really wanted to close the wage gaps between females and males and black and whites, those two things right there, majoring in STEM and not having children out of wedlock, would really close the gap. It would close about 75 to 90% of the gap. Yeah. But that is not what they care about. These people are malicious, they're evil, they're liars. I think most of them know what needs to be done, but they'd rather be said, oh, it's discrimination and racism and sexism and misogyny, so give us extra money and free goodies. And that's where I personally like to advance the conversation. When someone says, oh, it's racism and bigotry, I don't like cower like, John Boehner and the typical Republicans. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not racist. We're not. I say, like, yeah, have a cup of SDFF. And here's the real reason why. And if you really want to close the gap, let's be serious about it and admit that what we've been doing hasn't been working. But if you're not willing to admit that there's some responsibility on the part of women and minorities, then I don't care to have a conversation with you, because you just want to keep this victim profession industry going on, and you have no desire to actually close the gaps. So that's the difference between, say, what 1964, 65, when we instituted the Great Society, and what we have today, which is basically just a bunch of parasites and pariahs and professional victim whores.
Aaron, so talking about food stamps and welfare and things that are supposed to help people. I mean, the problem is that it's a government thing and people want to use other people's money by force through taxes and redistribute it. And there's nothing wrong with someone getting food. It's just how they're going about doing it. And I think that's the misconception a lot of the liberal left community likes to paint on the other side, or libertarians, or just people that are against these big government programs. But food stamps, for instance, if it really was about the health of the children, the health of families, why are they allowed to go to Burger King and these fast food places and use it on junk?
Well, but they're allowed to because they can. And it's like, it's good intentions, but when you have an institution or a tool like the government disseminate or provide these tools or these good intentions, it always has been taken advantage of. And this is where, again, it's like, okay, let's say you're poor in 1965, I might be a little bit more agreeable with you. But today, I'm sorry, most of the poor people are obese. And don't tell me it's because you can't afford organic food. No, it's because you have no self-control. You've had now 2 to 3 generations of people living on welfare. And there is none of that morality that used to exist back in the 50s and the 60s, or the shame. So you have the government, there's no control. On top of it, you have a huge incentive for politicians, Democrat or Republican, to use these as nothing more than bribes. And you take away any kind of responsibility or consequence of your action. I'll never go hungry again, because I was starving in college. I didn't get full meals all the time. I learned my lesson, like, okay, I'm never going to be poor. I'm not going to become a pastor like my dad. I'm not going to be a stay-at-home mom like my mom. I'm going to get a degree that's going to pay off. So I learned through suffering and pain and agony. And when you take away all the negative reconditioning, people don't learn. And if you're going to use it on top of it as a bribery thing, then you get fat and lazy like the Romans did in 300 AD. So that's why it's not going to work. That's why you see, quote, poor kids more fattened up than a Thanksgiving turkey than I'd ever be able to enjoy that level of obesity, and why they also think they're entitled to it by this time. So there has to be a little bit of pain. There has to be some shame. There has to be a consequence to this. But that's not going to happen as long as it can buy you a vote, and politicians are never going to let people actually live with the full cost and consequences of their decisions.
Well, I want to get your thoughts on this. It's become pro-life falls into the Republican side, pro-choice falls into the Democrat side. But people, cross the aisle on that issue all the time because, it's its own issue. But how has it become? How did it get lumped in with women's rights? A woman's right to do with her body, and it's just become completely monopolized and taken over by the liberal left for a rallying cry for votes.
Well, I think a lot of that's had to do with propaganda and brainwashing that's occurred over the past 50 years. I mean, you had the feminists of the 60s, and they kind of took the issue, is really what it is. And then from increasingly kindergarten, although not kindergarten because they're not, but, definitely like middle school on to college, the left controls the tools of media, not just media itself, but more so in school and college. And women will believe it, like, oh yeah, it's my right, my body, da 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 da. And I'm not taking one side or the other. I'm actually pro-choice. But to explain why it's been turned into predominantly a female issue, well, one, they're the ones that are pregnant, and two, for at least 10 years, from the age of 12 to 22. Today's women are told that in school, and that's why, and not to mention men as well. The young men are also, yeah, this is a woman's right, woman's choice, da 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 da. And so that kind of lays the tone and lays down the premises of that argument. So it is a woman's right as far as it's been scripted and framed from the age of roughly 12 on. But they had this, what was it, Europe or Sweden, where it's like the men's right to financially abort, where it's like, well, wait a minute, it takes two to tango. Where's the men's rights in this? I mean, logically, the birth of a child should be between both the father and the mother. But then now we're coming on the financial aspect where the men have a financial right to abort as well, or at least the concept of that is. But as to why it is a woman's issue predominantly, it's because the left has made it so through education and propaganda.
Aaron, I want to get your thoughts on the liberal agenda surrounding guns. What would be a liberally ideal society for guns in this country? Like, what would, the top Democrats such as Hillary and Obama, what would be their ideal scenario for political gain, for whatever you want to call it, for the U.S. to be like?
I don't know. I'd have to talk to them individually, but I don't think most Democrats are against hunting rifles. Like, hunting is quite big. I mean, in Minnesota, certainly, anytime the Democrats are surprisingly pro-gun here in Minnesota because of our hunting. But when it comes to AR-15s, handguns, stuff like that, then they get a little bit, they turn a little sour to that. But I would say they probably like something like Britain. Between Britain and China, there are no guns. In Britain, you have hunting guns. So what ends up happening, instead of people getting shot, you get stabbed or clobbered or ran over by cars. I don't truly think they've thought that far into it, because you can kill anyone with you can outlaw whatever weapon you want to outlaw. There's another weapon that you can use to kill people. So murderers and thieves are going to go and kill regardless of what weapons you outlaw.
And they're going to get those weapons if they're even.
Well, yeah, and you could also say, like, the Mexican cartels, the drug lords, they're not technically supposed to have drugs or weapons, but man, they get them. So it's cute. You almost want to pat these Democrats on their head, say, oh, that's cute. You think you're more powerful than the underground or black market economics. I mean, you will get it if people want it. But to speak for them, and you'd have to ask them individually, I think they would like something kind of like Britain, where it's like, okay, you're allowed your bolt-action rifle to occasionally shoot a deer, or it's in China where all guns are outlawed, but everybody stabs each other, and there's just as many deaths.
Aaron, I want to bring up Bernie Sanders here. He talks about maybe something around a 70% tax on income earned over $1 million. Nothing's been set in stone yet. I think the first thing he wants to do is raise the top federal income tax to 50%. But what does that say about someone that they want to control 70 cents out of every dollar that is made over 1 million? And I guess where I'm going with this is, how does someone get off that it's like the government's money for them to do what they want with? And why is there not a respect for people's property in this situation?
Well, you got to understand Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, I'm not saying this to besmirch the guy, I'm saying it's true, because one of my clients paid me to do, quote, a Clarey test on Bernie Sanders, where I analyze the individual. Bernie Sanders is not a real man. He's never worked a real job in his life. His dad was a pretty good, well-earning union guy. And I think Bernie Sanders, starting at 22, ended up running for public office. This guy has never set foot in the private sector. He's never actually worked a real job. He doesn't understand the concept of private property. He's a spoiled little brat from, where was it? Not Vermont. Was it Vermont? But the larger point, if you look into this man's background, this is not somebody who worked in the coal mines and put himself through college. This is a spoiled little suburbanite brat that had all the benefits and pleasures of capitalism, but never had to work for it via his parents. And he immediately went not into the public sector. At least there's some your postal office guys, they'll walk around, they'll do some real work. This guy went straight into politics. He went straight into public office. So this guy is a 70-year-old public sector, public office automaton that has never had an independent thought in his life, and just doesn't, the concept of private property is beyond him. So that's why Bernie Sanders, in particular, doesn't understand the concept of, wow, I'm going to take 70% of this guy's earnings beyond whatever it's $1 million. I mean, he doesn't understand that at all. He only views it purely from the way he survived his entire life, and that is living off of others through taxation. So that's why he particularly agrees. As for leftists and liberals, I think the desire to survive, the desire to get resources for cheap or free, is a stronger force than any kind of self-respect for private property rights. I've gone in many circles and many rounds with leftists. I'm like, well, that's not your money. You didn't earn it. Well, yeah, but they earned it unfairly. It's like, well, what if they did it? They didn't earn it unfairly. What if they worked really hard? Well, the issue. You understand, you are asking them to give up part of their lives. You are making them your slave. You are asking them to work for you. They don't care. The morality, the desire to have other people's money outstrips, outpowers, outthinks, overrides any kind of intellectual, honest thought about private property, individual rights, individual freedoms, and people's entitlement to their own seconds of lives and the fruits of their own labor.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better myself. When it comes to the things that people want, food and, good restaurants, like, you see the A, B, C, we act like that these things wouldn't come around if it wasn't for the government. And there's this concept out there that just because we are against some government program, that we somehow are against what they're providing. And I get this all the time. It's like, oh, well, the government built the road. Why don't you stop driving if you don't like it so much? But see, that's the wrong concept. It's not that there wouldn't be roads if the government wasn't around building them. They would just get done in a different way. And I even have a friend of mine with an autistic kid, and he was having a conversation with me about, well, I really appreciate the service I get from the government, regarding the help, the teachers that come, and, would you want to take this away from me? I said, you know what, there's nothing wrong with getting help for your child that needs it. It's a real need. But we've taken the role away from the private sector by having the government do all these things in a much more inefficient and done in a way where it's literally, redistributing and therefore stealing from people. And you got to, I feel like if we did allow the free market to take care of a lot of these things, we actually would have better services for people and, business owners running these nonprofits that can actually go around and really do some very good services for people. But again, it's not through theft. It's not through government inefficiencies. And that's what we have today. Any more thoughts on that, Aaron, before we move on?
Well, it's the balance between where does charity take over, where does forced charity through government taxation take over. In response to your friend, I'm more cold-hearted. That guy decided to have sex with a woman and take on the risk that his child would not be born 100% healthy. That's neither your, my, or anybody else's consequence or responsibility. That's the responsibility he took. Now, being quite literal and using the English language to its, its definition, he's a parasite. I didn't have a kid. That's not my kid. I didn't take that risk. Why do I have to pay for the costs and consequences of somebody else's decision? Now, charity could certainly take over. And addressing your other point is, yes, usually 9 times out of 10, the private sector is better at solving problems than the public sector. The public sector is usually only good or optimally used when you're providing for public goods, universal goods, such as roads, defense, stuff like that. When it comes to bailing people out of their mistakes, having unfortunate consequences, say someone hit by a car, cancer, whatever else, then charity comes in, and usually that's better. But at least with charity, it's more local, it's more individual. There are more controls on it to make sure that truly deserving people get it. Whereas when it comes to the public sector, 9 times out of $10, it's being spent to bribe somebody and just take away the responsibility of their mistakes. Like, vote for me, I'll pay for your illegitimate bastard spawn, and just vote for me. And so society slowly does not learn to be responsible anymore. Now, the guy, is in your case, your friend who has a genuine autistic kid, that's a genuine case of charity. But once again, it's cowardly of him to say, well, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't be, when he has a beer with me, I'd say, yeah, actually I would. And I tell him because, I didn't get to have sex with your wife, and I didn't take the risk of the chance of having, a kid with, some health problems. People really have gotten, that's where government has come in, is it has really muted people's ability to learn about the true risks and costs of making decisions. And if the real world would be allowed to come in its entire force upon people that make decisions, and they were to suffer the true and total cost of their mistakes, they'd be a lot more careful in their decisions. But that's neither here nor there. It's just theory. But yes, in general, the private sector usually does better. But the government has kind of allowed for this responsibility or irresponsibility bubble to form, where people just think, oh yeah, everybody's going to bail me out, and I don't care how many people I enslave because I'm entitled and the feels good. So
yeah. No, I definitely do agree with you. I mean, government policies, government programs have taken the responsibility away from people. I mean, even the way unemployment is, it keeps people unemployed for longer. And if people were actually paying for their own unemployment insurance, number one, people that actually make a lot of money can actually get real unemployment insurance and not just the $400 a week that they currently get. And the poor people won't just stay on unemployment for an extended period of time because they're making just as much as they would at their job that they lost. So again, it's a great distortion on what we're seeing. But moving over to our last topic that I wanted to ask you about, and that's the destruction of the middle class. I know you run a consulting service. Are you seeing people suffering from the destruction of the middle class in your circle of influence?
No, not really. Though my circle of influence is not what you would consider typical America. I mean, when I was working in banking, I probably saw a little bit more of a representative slice of America, but that was during the buildup and then the subsequent crash of the housing bubble. But right now, no, I don't see, and I intend to do a little bit of a study on this later on. I don't see a collapse in the middle class. If you look at quintile data, meaning every 20th percent, everybody's income is going up. I think what the problem is, people see the top 20% or the top 5 or the top 1 because everybody is jealous, and that's how human nature is. They say, well, oh, they gained this percent or they gained that percent, and I only gained 5. And you want to look at them and say, yeah, shut the hell up. You gained 5%. Your situation is not getting worse. It's getting better. So what if somebody made $20? You made $5. Why are you upset? So if you look, I mean, everybody's income is going up. It's just at which rate. And when they always say, oh, the disappearing middle class. Well, frankly, empirically, anecdotally, and then mathematically, I don't see it. There may be, the top 1 or 5% may be pulling away from the rest of society. They may be making twice or thrice much more than your average, Joe in America. But especially, the economic growth isn't great. But people's incomes, for those who are working, there's a key difference there. Those who are working, it's not getting worse. Not getting terribly better, but you're certainly not getting worse.
Well, Aaron, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you have any closing thoughts and you'd like to share with everyone, please do so. And also let people know where they can find you and reach out to you if they want to contact you for any of your services.
Yeah, about the only final thought I'd have is like everybody should stop whining. That's basically it. Just, I mean, we're such weaklings and cowards and simps compared to what Americans used to be. That if we just had a fraction of the work ethic and temerity we used to back in the industrial days, most of our problems would be gone. So that'd be the only wisdom. But yeah, you can find me. My consulting company is called Asshole Consulting. Go to assholeconsulting.com. My blog is captaincapitalism.blogspot.com. And then I got a podcast and a YouTube channel. Just search Aaron Clarey. Clarey spelled Clarey. And yeah, you'll find me on the internet pretty much anywhere.